It's amazing the way the Lord works, because I drifted away from Anglicanism. I no longer consider myself to be a Christian even. I was specialising in philosophy and specialising in Indian philosophy, and then moving over and specialising very much in Buddhist philosophy, and particularly Tibetan. And I became a Buddhist in the Tibetan Buddhist tradition, the same tradition as the Dalai Lama. I became a Buddhist in the Tibetan Buddhist tradition around about 1978, and I was then a Buddhist for about 20 years. And now, one might think, I think Christians might think, fellow Christians might think, I'm glad to say now, how tragic, how sad. He drifted away from being a Christian and became a Buddhist for 20 years. I'm not so sure about that, actually. My feeling now, I may be wrong, but my feeling now is that if I'd remained an Anglican all those years, given the changes that have occurred in the Anglican Church over the last 20 years, I think by now I would probably be very, very uninvolved, lapsed, uninterested. What happened was that I gave up being a Christian, but I became very involved in religion and philosophy and in practicing as a Buddhist. As a Buddhist, I used to lead Buddhist retreats. I've taken part in radio and television programs as a Buddhist. I've dialogued publicly with Hans Kung. I was a Buddhist dialoguing with Hans Kung. And it kept me interested, absorbed, until such time, I think, as the good Lord brought me back to the Christian faith. So I have no regrets about those years in which I was a Buddhist.
Well, there's that statement in 2 Corinthians, the opening part, that says that we are comforted that we might comfort others. God gives us experience that equips us to unique mission fields, which you have a gift that I can't talk to Buddhists or ex-Buddhists that you have in a very unique way. Now,
very much.
What were you looking for? Were you searching truth, searching meaning, were you direction in a positive or a negative sense? What was drawing you in those directions?
I wonder, what was I looking for in all those years when I was a Buddhist? I was looking, now I have to see what comes into my head. I was looking, first of all, for understanding, for truth. I remember, even when I was in my teens, walking along a street in the dark, saying to myself, what is true? What is the real meaning of everything? What is the final truth of things? And this is one point in which Buddhists and Christians have something in common. Both Buddhists and Christians agree that our final goal, our final fulfillment, what we were made for, if you like, although a Buddhist wouldn't say what we were made for, but put it that way, is to discover the final truth, final way things are. It's just that Buddhists and Christians completely disagree on what the final truth is. So I was looking for truth. Or how to define
between the many opinions, and we'll get to that later.
I was looking for truth. I was looking also, and this is tremendously important to me, I think, I was looking to deepen my own moral stroke spiritual, but for me morality is important. My own moral understanding. What is right? We have so many different forces, so many different influences on us, saying this is right. Oh no, that's not right. This is right. That's wrong. Or oh no, that's not wrong. This is wrong. So on. How do I find what's right and what's wrong? After we've only got. I now think we've only got one life to find it out in. Of course, Buddhists believe in reincarnation. Yeah. That's different.
It's interesting in the way the Lord works, because this was not only a time in your own life, physical development in your late teens and early 20s, that's right, that you're going through this search, but our cultures are going through that search.
Yes.
The 60s and 70s, look at the craziness of it. It is interesting, that's the time of the Jesus people. A lot of people were searching and finding and seeking. I remember in my early college days, early 70s, there were young people exploring Buddhism, trying to find something they could hang their hat on, because they were presuming that everything that had been handed them was wrong.
Yes, absolutely. And I think, it very much was part of the time. I learned meditation. Actually, I originally learned meditation with the Maharishi Mahesh Yogi people. Of course, I was influenced by the fact the Beatles took up transcendental meditation with the Maharishi Mahesh Yogi. Some people might remember that.
Very popular.
Yes, and I used to enjoy burning incense. But having said that, we look now and we find that a little bit amusing. But actually, that was for us then real spiritual search, a real attempt to find out. It was a little bit. I didn't just do it in my spare time as a hobby. I took it up as a profession. I actually wanted to find out what Indian philosophy was about. I mean, I fell out with various Indian traditions because I found that the way they're presented in the West is simply distorted and superficial. So I really did go into this stuff, and I learnt the original language. And I've written a few books on Buddhist thought and so on. But I carried on searching. Actually, it's funny. I mean, people sometimes say to me, well, why did you become a Catholic? Or, no, let's put it this way, why did you give up being a Buddhist? And one reason is that I couldn't meditate. I tried really hard for years and years and years. I even taught meditation, and I couldn't do it. I begin to doubt sometimes as to whether anyone can, really.
Oh, we're going to have our Buddhist audience will say, well, that's the reason. If he'd have meditated, he wouldn't become a Catholic.
Well, they might well say that. I don't have any problems with that, because, I mean, I've already had Buddhist friends.
Well, the reality is that from a Catholic perspective, meditation is a very important part of Catholic teaching of mystical theology.
Yes.
We sometimes get it mixed up with Eastern thought, but yet there are threads that are very similar. Now, my guess is that, like me, a lot of the audience listening don't know very much about Buddhist teaching and don't realize that in a certain sense it isn't a religion as we understand it. In our Western thought. So, I mean, one of the main questions to ask is, from a Buddhist perspective, you look back to your Buddhist days, where was God?
Yes, that is indeed the however many $1,000 question you said, a $20,000 question or whatever. Yes, perhaps it might help viewers to get this, to understand this point. Buddhism, in all its forms, I mean, there's no dispute about this, in all its forms, does not believe in God. Buddhism is a religion that does not believe in God. There are plenty of Buddhist texts that give arguments against the existence of God. In other words, against the existence of a creator, of an omniscient, omnipotent, good creator.
To whom we are responsible.
To whom we are responsible, yes. I mean, if we understand God as being the answer to why there is all this here, Buddhism does not hold that there is a God. Buddhism does not hold that we need an answer to the question, why is there all this here? Or at least, Buddhists don't hold that there's a final answer in the sense in which Christians hold that God is the final answer. So this is quite central. Buddhism, and I think this is one reason why a number of Westerners, including me perhaps, find Buddhism so attractive, is that if we have a problem with the idea of God, Buddhism is a religion which doesn't require God. So we can still be religious. We don't have to go off and give up all religion and become dreadful materialists or whatever. We can still be religious without needing to believe in God. So, sorry.
I don't want to interrupt your flow, but I need to talk about what you mean by religious then. I mean, there's no God, but you may not want to go there yet, but we need to get there at some point.
Yeah, okay, no, I can go there now. There have been some people in the past who said that because Buddhism doesn't believe in God, it is not a religion. I personally have no particular problem with calling it a religion. There was, if, for example, someone was to produce a book of the major world religions, I would expect Buddhism to be in there. And, what's in a word? I don't see why Buddhism should be ruled out. However, if we define religion as having a God, then of course you would have to exclude Buddhism. That's one reason why some people prefer to refer to Buddhism as maybe a form of psychotherapy or something like that. And I want to explain why that is. People may think, well, if Buddhism doesn't believe in God, what actually does Buddhism? What is Buddhism about? The answer is that Buddhists consider, in some respects it's quite simple, Buddhists consider that our problems, our suffering, our unhappiness, comes from greed, hatred and delusion. In other words, Buddhists consider that it is something to do with our own minds that is why we actually suffer. We suffer because our minds are dominated by greed, hatred and delusion. Therefore, you reverse greed, hatred and delusion. So what's the opposite of greed, hatred and delusion? Let's say altruism, kindness and wisdom. You reverse that and all your suffering ends. End of it. That's the end of Buddhism. This is why Buddhism is all to do with meditation. Buddhism works on the mind to reverse greed, hatred and delusion. So Buddhism is, in that respect, all to do with transforming your mind, and that's why some people think it's a form of psychotherapy.
The ultimate trek to being an isolationist?